Are there any examples of this law being enforced after the Supreme Court declared it unconstitutional?
Two gentlemen kissed each other in an El Paso restaurant, and the manager saw that and said, hey, cut out that activity, you can't do that here.
When the law was in effect, violating it was a Class C misdemeanor, but tracking the number of times it's been used or misused after the Lawrence v. Texas decision is tough. One reason, the state only requires the municipal courts to hold on to criminal records for 5 years. After a search of the 10 most populous counties statewide, we did find a few instances though, including a high-profile case out of El Paso in 2009.
What is your emergency?
Because we came to eat, and a couple that flipped us, they're two males, and they're boyfriends, and they're kissing, and they're kicking us out.
And when the police came, the police officer said, well, gentlemen, don't y'all know I'm going to arrest you for homosexual conduct. That's against the law.
They're saying that it's a law that you can't be doing that in public. I do think it's a little discrimination.
The homosexual conduct in that particular case was two men kissing. So I think you've got a problem with people just not understanding what's going on.
Not only is the continued existence of this law on the books a source of misinformation to law enforcement,
but in my own district, local governments have been forced to expend their limited resources due to this misuse.
The city of El Paso settled a lawsuit about this.
Yes, they did. They spent a lot of money.
We did.
Went all the way up to the El Paso Court of Appeals.
So we actually have an example of taxpayer dollars being totally wasted.
Was unconstitutional and unenforceable, yet here it was being cited by police.
You know, I'm not proud of what happened for our community. I think it was a black eye to the community.
I do believe that there is some much needed education on what's going on and, so it doesn't happen again.
The city settled and police had to be retrained on the law. How have those steps helped?
Part of the remedy after the incident took place was education of the law enforcement officials to let them know what was appropriate.
You introduced a resolution, and what did that do?
So basically the resolution is just a statement by the city council of this is what we stand for. Whereas the city of El Paso fully supports and endorses the 2003 United States Supreme Court decision in Lawrence versus Texas, the city of El Paso firmly rejects acts of discrimination, intolerance, and bigotry.
All these years later, what's changed?
As a matter of fact, the city flies out pride colors. The leading institutions in the community have pride recognition. I think the climate is better, but you still have rhetoric. You see how history repeats itself.
Chair calls Megan Behoon.
I'm here today to speak in favor of House Bill 2055, which seeks to remove unconstitutional language from Texas Penal Code. As a queer Texan, this section of Texas Penal Code has been a constant fixture of confusion, difficulty, and frankly, wasted time.
Megan, I can say from experience in El Paso, our city faced a lawsuit over the confusion and misapplication of this.
My entire life is in boxes, and all things that make this my home are already gone. I am a non-binary intersex person. As a teenager in Texas, I was most readily identifiable as a lesbian.
I am old enough that I had this section of code wielded against me for simply existing in public with my girlfriend. I received citations for simply walking down the street holding her hand.
It said that we were being cited for violating public decency and sodomy laws. We weren't making out on the street or anything else.
You've also had difficulty with a landlord.
I have had well-intended landlords who said they just didn't want to risk a crime being committed on the property, citing this section as recently as 2019.
I mentioned my spouse, and the landlord then began to ask me questions about the gender of my spouse and what my identity was. She was concerned because that's illegal in Texas.
Even though the law isn't enforceable at this point.
It requires that you look at that actual section of code to see that it's declared unconstitutional. So a lot of people don't really understand that it's not enforceable.
It is long past time to remove this language from the Texas Penal Code to protect Texans.
I was encouraged by every member of my immediate family to not sit down and discuss this. We've had experiences where we've received death threats, and we shouldn't have to live in that kind of fear just to speak to things that should be part of standard everyday life.
In 2023, this bill, something proposed to protect LGBTQ+ Texans, was rare. Lawmakers also filed a record amount of legislation that would restrict this community. And even months after the session ended, uncertainty lingered, as some bills that passed were challenged in court. It's part of the reason why many in this community are choosing to leave the state.
Being pushed to a point where my family feels so unsafe that we need to leave again is a really difficult circumstance. There's a possibility of moving back, but it's going to require that we can be sure that my family is safe when we cross the state line, that when we land in the airport, that we are accepted for who we are.
House Bill 2055 by Representative Venton Jones relating to the repeal of the criminal offense of homosexual conduct.
It seems your testimony resonated with the committee members.
There were some surprises for me.
The chair moves that House Bill 2055 as substituted be reported favorably to the full House with the recommendation that it do pass and be printed. The clerk will call the roll.
Chair Moody.
Aye.
Vice Chair Cook.
Aye.
Representative Johnny.
There being 9 ayes and 0 nays, the motion prevails.